Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to all of you, and from wherever you have joined us from today. Welcome to CollabTalk. Thanks for taking time in your busy schedules to join us for a little fun, information, and opinions. My name is Lyman Goodrich, and I'm your IT Unity producer. During today's show, we really encourage you to participate and engage with our panelists. Please check out the chat window. I think it's on your navigation bar. You can chime in there with any kind of information, any personal work and experiences, any questions you have on there. Today's episode, as well as previous episodes of CollabTalk, are all recorded and are living IT Unity at itunity.com/CollabTalk. That's itunity.com/CollabTalk. Today's episode is called The Future of SharePoint, the rest of the story. So let's get things started. Please welcome your panelists, Naomi Moneypenny, Marc Anderson, Christian Buckley, and John White. So let me get them all unmuted here. And let's see, there we go. And there we go. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks so much, Lyman. Really appreciate it. So always fun to be back for CollabTalk. I guess I'm your host today. My name is Naomi Moneypenny. So I am the Chief Technology Officer at many worlds, creators of machine learning apps called Synexi and Streaming It Out Loud to drive engagement on Yammer networks. And I'll let Christian Buckley introduce himself.
Well, thanks, Naomi. My name is Christian Buckley. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with BZ. I'm a 5-time MVP. I'm based outside of Redmond, Washington here. And I'm on the headset. I'm going old school because I'm in a very echoey, all wood, all the time room here. But, glad to be here. And Marc, it's always great to see your smiling face on the other side of the camera.
Well, thanks, Christian. It's so nice to be here with you. I'm Marc Anderson. I'm sitting outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a SharePoint guy, I guess, and resident curmudgeon. And it's nice to be here. John, it's so nice to have you join us today. We invited you special because we're going to talk about some of your favorite topics.
Thanks a bunch. I felt the urge but didn't have time to grow a beard for the episode. I'm just looking at the graphic.
Fail. Total fail. No beard.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. And for those who don't know me, I'm John White, SharePoint MVP or Office Servers and Services or whatever it is this week. Yeah. CTO of Unlimited Viz. We are located just outside of Toronto, Ontario, who is going to play host to the Worldwide Partner Conference next month. So looking forward to have everybody down here in my backyard, some literally. So it should be fun.
I want to come to the barbecue. I so badly want to come to the barbecue. Anyway. All right, I think we should get started maybe and chat about some of the big news. So yesterday we heard that Microsoft acquired LinkedIn. It's a bit of a surprise, I think, to most of us anyway, and especially when they have $26 billion of cash. Microsoft basically paid about $60 per user, so it's $60 for you, me, and everybody else you know on LinkedIn. So it's kind of an interesting acquisition. So I wanted to get your thoughts, guys, on what do you think about that, and given that we're going to be talking a little bit about social graphing, what's your thoughts on the acquisition?
I thought the most interesting thing I heard out of all of it was the phrase economic graph. The concept, I take that to mean, and I'm of course filling in the blanks and making stuff up, but I take it to mean the way we're connected outside of our organization to everyone else, which is an incredibly sophisticated and complex view of the world because we've all had multiple jobs, we have multiple relationships with other entities outside of our jobs, and if Microsoft can somehow pull off building that idea of a graph, which is analogous to the Facebook version, which is our personal graph, then that would be something. That would be really impressive and scary to some people, but to me, more impressive.
I thought it was really interesting to see that, if we think about how we do collaboration in the future, obviously we've seen so many stats about most of us will become kind of free agents in the future, and such that we'll work on contract basis, we may be alumni to different companies, and then just the sheer power of needing to collaborate with lots and lots of different people. So I think it's a great acquisition for them. It's going to be really interesting to see this actually get to put together. So I have to say that has to be a very long-term vision if we think about building in things like Skype for Business, right? If you think about doing the external collaboration there, maybe through Office 365 groups, making it easier for people to access those services and to work together. But that way you have that graph of all of those relationships as you're describing, Mark. So it's that it's the value chain, right, that surrounds a person. And it'll be really interesting to see how that all works out. I know, Christian, you've got to have some thoughts about this.
Well, yeah, I did a blog post on it yesterday. I mean, one of the first things, there's a lot of value add there. I think a lot of people immediately jump to Microsoft has been trying to buy a huge social network for years and kind of get this. I don't believe that was really so much the driver as the value of the purchase here. One of the things that jumped out to me as a marketing guy is the fact that Microsoft has not been very successful with identifying, most companies have not been successful identifying business decision makers just as part of that value chain. And so the fact that there's 433 million profiles in the system over the last 3-4 years, it's something like 3 billion people have crossed through and used LinkedIn at one point or another. And the fact that it focuses on business, it is the largest collection of BDMs, business decision makers, in the world. Yep. And that is data that is powerful to be connected to. And so if I have access now to those people, that network, through Microsoft and through the Microsoft graph, I mean, that just is amazing. So I think it's a huge win for Microsoft to acquire LinkedIn.
If you looked at the ZDNet article that came out yesterday, why Microsoft just bought LinkedIn, it's all about the data. It's exactly what you're saying. And I think that's interesting. And if you saw the SQL launch a couple months ago, Satya was on stage calling the data is the new electricity. Obviously I have a vested interest in that area, but this is what I keep seeing. It's we all needed a mobile play. A couple of years ago, everybody's got a mobile phone. Now we need a BI play.
Yeah. Interesting. I did think it was funny that there was somebody shared out on my my company intranet a picture, kind of a mock-up of Microsoft like a year from now, what LinkedIn looks like, and it had all the Word thing, the apps, everything across the ribbon across the top. It had Clippy in the bottom right corner. So I think there is some concern that some of that bloat will find its way over, and I think Microsoft needs to be very careful about not doing that.
The other thing from the LinkedIn side that I'm wondering how they're going to handle is LinkedIn's been around for a really long time, and yes, there's a lot of data there, but I happen to know from my profile that a lot of that data is crap. People have endorsed me for a bunch of things that I would never claim to have an expertise in. So there almost needs to be a house cleaning. I mean, I've been in LinkedIn since 2003, and so I've collected a lot of lint, and I think a lot of us have. So it'll be interesting what they go through to make that data more valuable than it probably is the way it is covered in lint. For those of us who've been there a long time, especially.
Yeah, I think the onus will be on you as a person, right, to help with that. Presumably they'll make it even more valuable to you to have an online presence that's up to date all the time and is not tied to your specific employer's email. So
yeah, there's going to have to be a value proposition for me to care about what people have played whack-a-mole with on my skills list, right? Because expertise locator is a tremendous value that Microsoft could use this for, but it only works if the data is good.
Yeah.
I think one other technical piece of this is for the last little while, I think Microsoft's trying to own identity in the cloud, and LinkedIn is certainly a big identity provider for the number of users you can see. So tie them into an Azure Active Directory account, and suddenly you've got authentication to an awful lot of services.
I think it's going to be really interesting. I know there's a comment in the chat room about, is this really about Office and sort of getting more, adoption of Office? And I think there is a play for that, certainly from an SMB perspective, maybe reaching out to customers who might not have ordinarily signed up for Office 365. I think, as most of these partners at Microsoft, we know that Office 365 is really kind of saturated in most enterprises these days, so on large scale anyway. So I wonder if, the SMB perspective is part of that. So if you're reaching out to small and medium-sized businesses, maybe you include some basic tools, through LinkedIn to let you do collaboration, and that's kind of an easy way to on-ramp onto other services that you then have to subscribe to. Or maybe, the LinkedIn Premium account or the SlideShare type of functionality, which many of us use, and as well as things like Lindo, as people have mentioned. Those other services can all get bundled up as well into kind of a business offering with some Office components to allow collaboration on that too. So I think it's really kind of exciting, right, to see what they're going to do. I think it's actually a really great acquisition. So, it's great for Microsoft. So I think it will be definitely an interesting journey, and definitely a very long horizon, probably on making changes and seeing how things go. But that plus, we've got that data, and then we've got all the Xamarin recent acquisition as well. I mean, all this stuff coming together is just kind of incredible if you think about it, really, where Microsoft is going. It's kind of the open source company. It's an open graph company. Right?
Yeah.
That's what's happening. Anyway, all right, I wanted to go from that, and maybe since we've talked a little bit about the sort of SMB space, maybe we should bring people up to speed a little bit in terms of some of the new offerings that are coming out there. So we heard a great deal of stuff in the Future of SharePoint event. There was lots of new functionalities coming. It's not just the SharePoint part of it. It's also looking at how all of these other new functionalities are interacting with it on the platform. So we heard about Microsoft Flow. We heard about native Power App support inside of SharePoint, increases in Power BI functionality, which is amazing. And then we have adjunct services that you might have heard about. So if you're in the small and medium-sized business space, there's a new offering out there called Project Madeira, which is a really interesting thing. And I think it's really curious to see how Microsoft is kind of trying to take all of its services and make it very, very easy to consume. So I don't know, Christian, maybe do you want to walk us through a little bit about Project Madeira, and just to give us a recap of that functionality, and then we can have a little discussion about it.
Yeah, no, if I'm the best person to walk through, I sat through to kind of get a grounding. It's a little bit outside of my area of expertise. I know, Mark, you were attempting to play with it, but I don't know. Did all of us participate in the call and get the backgrounder?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was a really, Mark, I don't know. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure.
Sorry.
He's tossing the potato at me.
Well, I can do it.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No, so to me, looking at Project Madeira it's sort of a cross between a dynamic CRM and a QuickBooks kind of thing for probably going to be a lot more valuable for smaller businesses. But I think what it looks like to me as a QuickBooks Online user is a real competitor to that. Something that's going to give me as a small business a good suite of tools that's pretty much turnkey. I would have to go in and set up my chart of accounts and things like that, like I would with any accounting package. And then I think it goes deeper into CRM than some of the other sort of standalone accounting packages do. It looks nice. It seems to have a lot of capability to it. I don't think it's quite ready for prime time yet, but it's in preview or whatever they're calling it these days. But I think it's got some real promise to help extend the Office 365 family, because I see it as part of that, down into the smaller business segment, where you become so dependent on the services that are actually operational services like this, that Office 365 starts to look like a great idea for collaboration and other things.
Yeah, and isn't that kind of where we are kind of circling back to, Microsoft 10 years ago was all about these, small business server solutions. And in fact, one of the precursors to what is Office 365 was a standalone server solution. In fact, Microsoft was initially stepping into what is now Office 365 by building out SharePoint, the WSS version of that, with Exchange on that standalone server and offering that out to resellers and to small businesses to go and host and manage and run on their own. So it's just kind of come back to that model. But I think to your point, Mark, it's also looking at the end-to-end story. It's not just saying, here's a service, Office 365, here is dynamic CRM, here's this, and we're now looking and saying, okay, for this class of user, what is that end-to-end experience? How are they using all these things? They're starting to fill in those gaps so that there is an end-to-end solution.
Right. It really gives me that sort of one location to go to do all of my work as a small business, a small to medium-sized business probably. I mean, I can't quite see this extending up into anywhere near the enterprise level because it's just that's a much bigger animal. But, it's going to be interesting to see how sticky it makes Office 365 for some of these smaller organizations.
And what I think is amazing, it's taking that enterprise capability that we had as part of Dynamics, right? And you're really taking that whole area and making that enterprise software, which is a big package, right? It's a big system. You try to roll that out and making it very consumable and then bringing it together with Office 365. And that's what's kind of amazing from a small business perspective. It's like you want to bring these two big, huge packages, right? You've got two big platforms. If I have to learn everything in Office 365, well, that's really hard, right? You can't do that. And you know about Word and PowerPoint and whatever if you're an SMB, right? But you don't know about the rest of the stuff. But then you've got Dynamics, what was previously Great Plains. And you've got that coming in, right? So you've got the power of those big enterprise platforms, but making it really, really simple for you to actually use, right? So for me, it's just really exciting to see that interoperability going on between Office 365 and the Dynamics group, which sometimes have felt a little bit disconnected. And I'm really hoping that it actually shows that more of these kind of horizontal solutions or more targeted solutions that are going to come out so that you don't care whether it's SharePoint or OneDrive or Dynamics or whatever, right? You just care about all of that data being brought to you and it's actually, making something useful for you without caring which product line or which product area came up with that particular functionality. I think, success, like many things with Microsoft in this case, we want to not be able to tell who drove the integration, right? I think that's really the big success measure for Project Madeira. So far, so good, right? So you can definitely check it out. You can sign up for Project Madeira. It is in preview still. It's only available in the United States currently, so it is going to roll out worldwide, but they're still working on that timeline. But if you're in the United States, you can certainly trial it and give them a lot of feedback because they're definitely looking for that too.
And now I'll bet John, to help segue to where you were about to go, is excited about it because there's a lot of data that's going to be inside that Project Madeira about the organization that we don't have in Office 365 today.
Well, being in Canada, I wouldn't know. But.
Should we be talking about this?
Yeah, I absolutely. It was interesting. It was. It struck me while you were describing it about we're taking these great big complex systems that sit here in the back end, and we're bringing them together, making them very, very easy to use. How analogous that is with Power BI, which, by the way, didn't exist in its current state even a year ago. This thing's only about 11 months old, and it's doing exactly the same thing. I mean, if you look at Microsoft's BI stack today, and really historically, it's quite complex. It's difficult for most people to get their heads around. What do I need where? What pieces do I need? How good is anybody here at SSAS, for example? Well, what Power BI is simply a nice front end on SSAS in a lot of ways. SSAS, SSIS, a lot of these other various BI products. And it's very easy to get an end user into Power BI, let them point Power BI at their data, and they can get up and running and start mashing up visuals very, very simply. It's exactly the same design point, I think, as Project Madeira. Like the ERPs, traditional ERP systems take months, if not years, to get rolled out at organizations. And that thing up and running, bang. Same thing with Power BI. Their mantra while developing that product was it 5 minutes to wow, 5 clicks to set up and 5 minutes to wow. So I think that philosophy seems to be permeating the organization of Microsoft, and I think they can get a lot of success doing that. Power BI has certainly demonstrated that in the last year. It's just going full steam. The last March, I think it was in March, the conference, they said they were up to 5 million users after about 7 months of usage, so, which is, I got to say, that's pretty successful. That's actual active users.
Yeah, and then I mean, obviously there's an amazing range of data that you can now include as part of your Power BI integrations right into lots of other places. So I've been really impressed with the Power BI dashboards that you can see in Sway, right? Just being able to take that information and show it up in Sway is kind of amazing. And then obviously being able to expose it inside of SharePoint or wherever you want to consume that. So were there any things, John, that you saw particularly in the future SharePoint type event that you think is really killer?
There was they didn't really talk about from a BI standpoint, that wasn't highlighted in the future SharePoint event itself, except for one thing. When we were talking about the new dev model and the new page model within SharePoint and then the new client, I'm going to call them client-side web parts. I don't know if that's the right term or not, but I'm going to continue. New age web parts, if you will. I don't. But during in the insert a web part, in the dialog box that comes up, there's a number of items you can stick in there, and one of them is a little Power BI icon. And a lot of people have been talking about, what are we doing? You know, how do we get Power BI into SharePoint? We're of course used to SSRS integrated mode, right? Or some of us are anyway, where we can take reports or pieces of reports and embed them in SharePoint pages to create dashboards. Can't really do that with Power BI today, but it looks like we're about to be able to. There's certainly a placeholder for it. Power BI still needs to build out its ability to its parameterization capabilities. It started to. We're seeing parameters appear in various aspects of the product. But once we have that in place, now we can start to embed these in the new client-side, these client-side web parts. And oh, by the way, they should work just fine both in the cloud or on-prem. So it's interesting on the SSRS and Power BI side what you can do on-prem and in the cloud. SharePoint has kind of been restricted to the Excel piece of that, right? If you've got an Excel file sitting in Office 365, Power BI can keep it refreshed. That's nice. That's great stuff. But you know that the new sexy visualizations in Power BI aren't there at the moment. So I think that's pretty exciting as to what's coming. So and on a totally different note, we were able to take Power BI and Flow and put them together for the future SharePoint event itself and monitor all of the Twitter traffic online. So that was a fun little side project to show that, and it worked. It worked like a champ, actually. We handled, I think it was over 10,000 tweets in 2 hours. So that was cool.
Have you posted that data out there, John? Is that available for people to look at?
Yeah, it is. It is. I can't remember what the URL is off the top of my head. I have to dig it up, but it was there because that's one of the things you can do with Power BI if the data is not sensitive, is publish it anonymously. That's kind of the first embed story that they gave us, and so that was available during the event. The only problem with doing that is the data can be up to 1 hour. 1 hour delayed, which for a 2 hour event is kind of a problem. But there's various different ways of handling that. But yeah, that's certainly out there for the event. So if you go back in the Twitter stream, you'll see that posted, or I can provide that later on if you like. We also did a variation of this thing for the Adriatics, the SharePoint conference Adriatics a couple of weeks ago, where we mashed up both Twitter data and conference evals. So all of the conference evals were done real time on a phone as you left the room, and bang, you could walk out into the foyer and see what the results of all the session evaluations were on a screen that's hanging over the registration desk. And that worked too, so we were pretty happy with it.
Yeah, that was really nice. And one of the great things about that was the real time nature of it. You know, when we all go to conferences a lot, and we ask people to fill out evaluations after the fact, and they may or may not, but because it was right in the room with a barcode kind of thing, everyone's scanning the screen on the way out doing their evaluations, and it was all just tallying up. So it showed the value of BI in a real-time situation that I don't think I'd seen a great demo like that of. It was sort of cool. There it is on the screen. Mm-hmm. Very nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, both Jason Himmelstein and I and Dave Feldman are looking at how best to provide this to the community at large. So we might. I don't know where that's going to go, but that's something we're looking at right now.
Sounds like a product idea, John.
then maybe we won't be.
I don't think you're going to make a lot of money from SharePoint conferences. Sorry. I'm just
exactly. This one might be more of a goodwill thing, I think, but yeah.
Sorry. It's okay. All right, well, I think that'd be a great segue maybe to talk a little bit about Microsoft Flow, since you talked about Flow. And I think everybody has done the demo at this point where we capture the Twitter feed in Flow, because it's just awesome, right? It's like the simplest thing, and it really works very well. So, if people haven't tried Microsoft Flow, you can certainly go out there. It's still, again, a preview service. But it's really working very well, and it's kind of like an if this then that type of thing, but for sort of more enterprise data is the way to say it. But it does include commercial services, like Twitter is in there. There are a few other services that you can hook in of external services. You're going to see a lot more of those, like Salesforce, etc., coming out there. And then you can also obviously be able to mix that in with some of the data that you have in your own systems. So I've loved playing around with Microsoft Flow. It makes it super simple, right? You can just drag and drop the boxes. So you can grab things like Twitter feeds and you can mash them together. And then you can also have some rules around that, right? So if you get some basic workflow as part of that. So Mark, maybe you want to talk a little bit about, is this the InfoPath replacement? Or, how far into the InfoPath world does it go? From a replacement perspective?
To me, it feels more like a workflow, like SharePoint Designer workflow replacement.
You have people entering in data and different systems.
I think the way I'm sort of seeing it in my head is that Power Apps may be more of the InfoPathy kind of replacement, though anyone at Microsoft would tell me to shut up about that. And then Flow is more like the SharePoint Designer workflow, or the real business user kind of workflow. The thing that impresses me is, again, the simplicity and the great UI on things like Flow and Power Apps as well. But I think when you look at Flow, you sort of know what to do right away, and that is a different kind of UI than we've historically seen from Microsoft, because lots of times you need an engineer or you need a consultant like me to sit there and translate what the hell's on the screen. So I think the fact that you can glue together a couple of Twitter feeds and see what's going on and things like that so fast is a great thing. It reminds me of, there was a thing from Microsoft Research maybe probably longer ago, 10 years ago, called Pop Flies. Does anyone remember that? They were like building blocks that let you, a block that did this and a block that did that, and you glue it together. It's like one of those old electronic sets. That's sort of what Flow feels like to me. And this concept of building blocks that you really do just sort of, land together and it does stuff for you has been around for a long time, but it seems to be getting to the point with things like Flow that it actually works. And I think people are going to be able to do some nice things with it. I love the fact that these separate applications all add up to a bigger picture. We're seeing them come out, and so if you don't sort of stand back and see that they're all happening at the same time and sort of pointing at some of the same data, you might not see a pattern. But I think there's a definite pattern that we're putting better tools into the hands of business users so that they don't need developers like me, which I think is a very good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that.
I think part of why it's working now is the way that it's deployed. It's deployed into, it's almost invisible, right? It's so simple to just go to flow.microsoft.com, sign in with your ID, right? I know, Mark, you might have to do that 3 or 4 times.
7 or 8 times, yeah.
But that's fine. But you just simply sign in, connect the services, and just get going. You don't have to install anything. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's just all handled for you behind the scenes. I think we see a theme developing, eh, Naomi? It's simple. It's simple. Just drag this over here. I mean, we've all had drag and drop workflows and things like that for a long time. It's just so simple that instead of being dependent on all of these different architectures, they just hook into these different architectures. It lives on its own. It's got kind of the best of both worlds that way. I'm quite pleased with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's part of that whole consumerization of the UI that we're seeing across these Microsoft properties. And when I say that, I mean it in a good way. They're taking the best of the consumer web, and they're bringing those visual metaphors into the business tools. There's no reason that Facebook should look better and act better than a business tool should. And so when we look at something like Flow, where we drag and drop some stuff on the screen and it just does magic, that's what people are expecting out of their business tools these days, and a lot of times they're not getting. So it's very cool.
What's interesting is that I know that you guys have heard me say this before, but somebody had made the comment back in November so I saw Power Apps for the first time, and somebody made the observation that some of the theming, some of the look and feel of Power Apps looked very much like Sway, it had similarities to Sway. And so at the Future SharePoint event, we actually had a conversation about that. We said, are you guys is it talking? Are they going to link it together? Because the idea, which I think is very exciting, is that you can actually, why doesn't the Office suite have this kind of intelligence building capability? Why is it just not in the ribbon, just another section, another series of options to add that intelligence into the things that we go and create? Like a Sway, I know that there's people that like Sway, and there's people that are just not yet ready for prime time. Think about how powerful that would be if you could have real-time dynamic business information being fed into that Sway. So it's not just a presentation of data with video and context and content, but you could actually do training activities, poll people live within that. And get data about where do people fall out of this training process, how long does it take them to get from the third question to the seventh question, and then provide the dynamic information in real time, as they're adding to that conversation. It's some exciting stuff. I think part of the answer that we got in the beginning of May at the Future SharePoint event was that it's not the same team working on Power Apps and Sway, of course, but they have been talking. And I think, I know, which is my experience back, 10 years ago working for Microsoft that was a rare thing.
Yeah, it wasn't talking, it was taunting. That's a very different experience, right?
Well, did you notice the insert, again, that dialog box for the client-side web parts, the dialog box that pops up? Have any of you guys ever used Squarespace before?
Yeah, it's exactly like Squarespace.
Identical to Squarespace. And again, what people are used to, what people are finding friendly. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, the first time I saw it, I immediately thought Squarespace. It's like they stole the whole page model idea. But you know why? It's good. People get it.
Yep.
No, I like this. I like the idea with Flow, really, of being able to combine all this easy data. And like you were mentioning, Mark, really around this idea of having blocks, right? We have these modules and we can put them together as business users. And basically it's providing us a GUI for our data, right? Or a GUI or a way to get our data. And I find that just incredibly powerful. We'll see, all these other different enhancements that are coming out. But if you think about it as SharePoint is, that big platform we've always talked about, and there's all kinds of amazing stuff happening in the platform itself, and then you augment it with stuff like, here's all the stuff you're doing with Microsoft Flow. Here's an easy way of grabbing the data, constructing a little workflow for yourself, bringing that data in, putting it in SharePoint, then, being able to draw that data into another system like Power BI and being able to visualize that stuff. And do it very simply, right? Which is kind of amazing, right? It's really the platform we have is SharePoint. That thing has expanded itself, but it's now really becoming that platform for all the data that you want and sort of that bridge between things. And then we have very simple ways for our business users to actually get a hold of the data that they need from external systems, from other line of business systems, and then to sort of manipulate that without needing developers, right? So, which is the coolest part for me. So I'm very excited with Flow. I've had some missteps with the preview. Obviously, all of these things are still in preview, but it's really another thing that people have in their kind of arsenal. I do think it will be interesting to see how it evolves in terms of how we communicate this out to end users. I know we've had lots of discussions about this in CollabTalk, because it's really, how do I deal with this fire hose of change, right? I mean, if you're just in the SharePoint space, right, how do you know about Flow, right? How do you know about what we're going to talk about Power Apps next? But, how do you even communicate all of these things now? Because it's much bigger than just SharePoint or how you understood it before.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting. I think it's going to be a big transition period, because a lot of these new applications that are apps that are coming out sort of are at odds to the traditional IT methodology, right? Where IT builds stuff and people use that stuff. These tools are going to be things that people take and just do their own thing with. we used to call them application programmers, or now we call them citizen developers sometimes. They're just going to do what they need, as opposed to having IT try to translate that and giving them something that isn't quite that. So the transition that it's going to take for IT to actually get good at providing services around these apps that they actually don't need IT for on some level is going to be an uncomfortable one for a lot of IT shops. I think it's a damn good thing. I mean, I think any IT shop that doesn't embrace the fact that end users can use these tools, just like they had to back when Lotus 1-2-3 was on everyone's desktop. I mean, this has been going on for 30-some years now, but IT shops tend to still be bad at it. The other thing that I did want to bring up that's a pain point that I hope Microsoft addresses really soon across these apps is, and I mentioned it before the call, I am so sick of logging into my Office 365 on my iPhone. Getting some sort of unified login identity management thing is becoming more and more important. I think I just looked on my phone. I think I have something like 22 Microsoft applications on my iPhone, and every single one of them makes me log in differently. So we have to get a better story there for these things to work together. And one of you said that that's actually coming soon. Is it true? What can we say about this?
What can we say that is an NDA is the problem, right?
Nothing. But I mean, they have to solve the problem.
Let's start with the two different Microsoft accounts, shall we?
Well,
yeah. Well, work versus your personal, right? Which is,
Except that they're not work and personal, and then we have LinkedIn. But it's going to get better.
One's called Microsoft, and the other's called, what is it? Anyway.
So as these different tool sets come out, that's going to be a huge stumbling block for a lot of people. I hope that they can solve it soon, and I have faith they will.
Have faith. All right, I think that would be a good transition. Maybe we can talk about Power Apps, which is also another extension we've seen really coming on stream very fast now. And what I'm most excited with the sort of the integration between Flow and Power Apps, which is kind of just a little bit of distinction, but also some integration that exists there. So when you authorize Microsoft Flow, you'll see it actually authorize Power Apps, right? So it's kind of Flow is type of a Power App in some ways. But Power Apps is really a great way for end users to construct mobile applications using your corporation's data. And so you can think about Power Apps as basically you can take list data from SharePoint, you could merge that in with data from Salesforce, you could pull in tweets from Twitter, right? And you could see a comprehensive picture of what a customer is working on or customer is looking at or what's influential for them. So it's a great way to sort of in this nice visual interface. It looks a lot like something between PowerPoint and Excel, basically. You can craft out these different screens for mobile applications, and you can try it out at powerapps.microsoft.com. And it's kind of a good way to build each single screen, and you can basically bring in that data as you need it, and there's some stuff there to help you out as well. There's a whole bunch of template applications out there, which is really exciting for me. Things like having the digital signing as part of it, so if you have something that requires a pen app, you can actually put that and you can drag that code in very simply. They've done a really great job in terms of putting the templates together, so you can explore and learn a little bit about that. Now this is another level above, I would say, citizen developer. Microsoft Flow is extremely intuitive, right? You just drag and drop a bunch of boxes and you can sort of play with the results, and if it doesn't look right, you can figure it out pretty quickly. Power Apps is a little harder from that perspective. You need some, function and be able to actually put together some functions and data together and be able to play with it from more of a sort of a Visio type of person maybe. So if it's something that if you've ever constructed web pages perhaps before in your past, you're in a business analyst type of place, that might be more of that end of the power citizen developer, such a thing exists, right? That's the easiest way to describe it. So these functions are very flexible together, but you can also use them separately if you just want to create a Power App from the SharePoint list, right? You want to consume Power App as part of that. So I think one of the big challenges we are going to see, and maybe that's a good thing to discuss about, is just the governance of people creating Power Apps, right? You're going to have all these end users who theoretically can create a whole bunch of apps based off of the data. And how do you actually govern that construction? And then how do you know which app is the most relevant or most useful to you, or how do you even discover those inside your organization? So if you guys have some thoughts about that too.
That is not a new issue.
Governance? What?
That chicken and egg thing has been around since Lotus Notes and probably earlier. We need to make it easy. We make it easy. Anybody can do it. If anybody can do it, we need governance. Oh, we better make
That's right. Right. But it's even more with mobile applications, right? If you're relying on one versus another in the field, I think it's even more than you can probably figure out if content's out of date. Might be a little harder to figure out if an application is out of date, right?
But I think that's part of the sort of maturation that I hope we will see with IT organizations around this. We've watched these cycles over and over again, and IT tends to make big mistakes. And users make big mistakes. If they work together, they don't. If they collaborate, if they do collaborative development, they actually come out with better solutions all around. Mm-hmm. A lot of it's unusual to see that sort of harmony between the end users and the technical people. So maybe this round will do a little better. I don't know. Maybe people like us flapping our lips will help to make people think about it a little bit differently. But I think John's right, and it's the same. It's just another cycle of, oh crap, they're good tools. They're going to use them. Let's stop them from using them. And then we're back in the same boat.
How many access databases are lying around out there?
Yeah. But I think the governance issue. It's a completely separate conversation, kind of from the first point that you made, Naomi. I think that SharePoint has a long history of being incredibly bad at extranet solutions. Mm-hmm. And my first thought with Power Apps is that it's not an extranet solution, but why are most organizations using an extranet? For field personnel that have discrete activities, people that are out there, to be able to go in more quickly and easily, be able to get access to that data that's behind the firewall, and take action upon it and happen as close to real time as possible. That's what this is powerful about. Then there's that governance issue, but being able to, this has always been, I think, the most fundamental problem in organizations with SharePoint is I've added my content in, I can't get it back out. Certainly not in the right time, the right people, the right place. That frustration. And so now being able to access that data in a much more dynamic way to serve those specific, defined, clear business needs, that's what this does. And so it goes away, it moves you away from needing to have, open everything up and have it in this extranet and supporting the separate system and the nightmare that is to manage, and just lets you have your intranet, have your SharePoint environment, all the data that's there, and then create these discrete activities via Power Apps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's just incredibly exciting. I really do. So I think it's just the mobile applications for me. It's like you can access it through that one tile in your phone. So you'll go to the Power Apps tile on your phone, and then you'll see all of the applications that are available to you. I just think it's very quickly, even just running some tests and doing some presentations about this stuff, I'm already I have a lot of apps, and I'm wow, this is going to be really interesting inside the company. So. But,
Naomi, I have a question for you. How do you see, there's a workflow engine within Power Apps, and there's Flow. Yeah. And they seem to share a lot of the componentry. Is that the right way for people to think about it?
I think about Flow as basically feeding into Power Apps. Like I said, when you authorize Microsoft Flow, you actually authorize Power Apps. So I feel that Flow is somehow a superpower app or something. I don't know exactly how that was constructed by the product team, but when you do that authorization, it says you're authorizing Power Apps, right?
It was separated out. It was part of the same. It was all Power Apps, right?
Yeah, so they're
right. So they've taken Flow out of Power Apps then somewhere else.
And then Azure Flow is a logic app. It's the same thing. These are logic apps.
Okay. So that's part of the sort of going along with this journey, right? The Flow is actually part of Power Apps, and now it's a separate, it wasn't called Flow in there, but there was a thing like Flow in Power Apps. Now they're separate things. If
Yeah, you can grab that data from Flow and upload it into.
So a lot of this is very fluid. So building stuff in Power Apps 3 months ago would feel different than it does now, which will feel different than it will in 3 months. So part of the joy of going along on this ride is that you have to figure out what's changing and what's going on across a lot of these apps, which is not easy. How do we do that?
This is why we have CollabTalk to tell people about this stuff.
But it's even getting hard for us to keep up. It's always been hard for us to keep up, but it's not getting any easier.
It's not getting any easier.
There's the roadmap, which is a site that can be helpful, but I think Microsoft is also struggling with how do we get better information out to the people here on all the cool stuff that we're doing without just saying we're doing cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
We'll have to watch and see how they start to tune the messaging around some of these things.
I think we're certainly seeing that. I mean, I think the challenge with IT is, right, we have to deliver these point solutions and then we join them together, right? It's just how it goes. So we do this, building out the niche and then we integrate, then we build out more niches and then we integrate, right? It's just the way things have evolved. But we're just seeing that cycle time now. It's kind of like we've gone from, dinosaur evolution to fruit fly evolution, right? In the software world, basically, right? And so this is like our life cycle on these generations is getting much faster.
I refuse to go any faster than a planaria. That is as fast as I'm going to go.
I think we're going to be an amoeba soon, but anyway, it's just like how things work out. But that's basically what's happening, and so I think it's really
it is good analogy, big to small too,
Sorry, I know. Who would think I would ever mention fruit flies and dinosaurs in CollabTalk? But anyway, but it's a good. Hopefully, you guys understand the analogy, right? Because that's what's happening basically, and it's synonymous with the rest of IT. Obviously, the same challenge is happening. So, as I mentioned in many presentations, right, the bottleneck no longer is technology, right? The bottleneck is becoming us as humans and our ability to comprehend, which means that there's more reliance on services, like the discovery part of it. So, if you're Delve and Office Graph, maybe it'll be linked into. If you're Cortana, basically we want things to help recommend the things that we need in the context in which we need them. And that's what Chris, really is going to be the next big stage that we'll see. So learning what people are actually doing, how to recommend them tools, how to recommend them applications, content, etc., that are really relevant to them as they go through their daily work and beyond, obviously.
Yeah, one of the things that I think has been missing for a while from Microsoft as they've come out with all of this new stuff, when we look at groups and team sites and all that stuff, that's one big pile of, but which one do I use when? And we're going to have, this glob of stuff we're talking about today, these separate apps are going to have the same sort of struggle. When do I go here? When do I go there? We still have the same problem with Word and Excel. People do word processing in Excel and they do spreadsheets in Word. So, this is not a new problem, but the more of these tools that are out there, the more guidance people are going to need. I know one of your near and dear things, Naomi, is machine learning. And if the machine can start to say, hey, it looks like you're trying to do something like Flow. It looks like you need to do something like what Power Apps can do. That would be awesome. It's clippy, but smart.
That's right. It's Cortana, I think, on your desktop, and you say, hey, I need to be able to get this data from Twitter, and I need to be able to do some questions or something as part of it.
Right.
And it just brings it up, right? It doesn't care if it's called Flow or Power Apps or whatever. I mean, I think you have to have that interactivity with your personal assistant to help you at least with that, at least in the interim, and then do things like contextualize recommendations of content and applications that are actually useful to you as you're actually doing things in a process, right? So, but we'll save that for another show where we talk about the future of how things all work there. So one other subject I did want to mention, so we've talked about all these different components, and the latest public preview that came out, I think just a couple of weeks ago now, was GigJam. And you might remember GigJam from Julia White's amazing demonstration, but it's been a while, right? So it's definitely been a while. So it's out there now. You can actually download the public preview on your phone, as well as you can also access the website too. And you will be given a choice of credentials with which to log into, as Mark can attest to that too. And you can use it basically from the components of your work environment, so your Office 365 type of tenant, or your sort of Microsoft, live account, or a live account as was. I don't know what to call it anymore, just your Microsoft account, I guess. And so you're able to do that. So one of the cool things that I like about GigJam is it's kind of an easy way to grab a dashboard of things together and then be able to share that out with people and to be able to query the data that's in there. So I don't know if I can show you this on the camera or not, but I'll certainly give it a go. I'm going to try to see this. So if I go here, I'm going to try to do this. Sorry, we don't know. This is a very low tech situation here. Maybe it'll refocus. Give it a second.
Or not.
Or not, as the case may be. There we go.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Okay, so,
Yes. Okay.
so I have a Word document open, and this is really difficult to do. And I can scroll down. So this is the iOS app here. So I've got my calendar open from Outlook, so it's bringing in that data. You can explore the data. You can see that I've got a Word document open from OneDrive. And then if I can do this on my phone, I can add in different sources here. So you see stuff like Box, Dynamics, Asana, Office 365, obviously all these different things. I've got Trello, I've got Wunderlist, all those kinds of things too. So I can actually bring in that data from these different applications as well. And then one of the cool things is if I do this, sorry, give me a second while I do this because it'll be impossible for me to navigate it. I can then actually, so if I go back to, for example, here's my Word document that I'm showing here, and it'll focus. Sorry. There we go. So you can see there I have, this is a group of session titles and some abstracts that are submitted for a conference. And let me see if I can actually do this. I can do this. So I can actually ring fence around that specific area of the document. And then I could actually ring fence even further and say, okay, I only want to share some of this information. And it could be across all of these different applications. So I can take this little ring here, and then I can say specifically this content right here. You see how the strange little rings are on here? So it'll look for those fields inside of the Word document. And then you'll see at the bottom here, there's a big share button. So I can actually ring fence the content that I want out of these different applications. So I'm bringing all this stuff together kind of like a dashboard, and then I can share it with other people. So you think about it from a gig perspective of like, say, if I'm inviting Mark to a project, I can share, here's, parts of the statement of work, here's parts of the Excel spreadsheet where we're tracking time or whatever it is, and here's some of the client deliverables, and I can mix and merge those things together and just share the parts of the stuff that's really interesting or useful for him. Or also if I want to keep some of it, because he's a contractor, I want to keep some of it apart from what he should see. So I can do that. And then the other really cool thing about it is that you can actually edit this so that you can talk to the application. You'll see right at the bottom here, it'll say speak or search. And so the little microphone icon, I'm sorry, it's taking forever to refocus. If you do that, it'll actually, you can actually query the data. So that's actually using the Cortana analytics service here. Basically, it sends that text up to the cloud, which is awesome, and then queries that data. So if I ask it, for example, to find all of the session titles in this document with machine learning, it'll actually go ahead and do that without me having to specify what a session title is, right? It's basically doing the same thing in Power BI that you do with the natural language querying, where it basically is looking for the columns and the rows in this case, and it's actually extracting that data, and I can query it immediately just by voice. And I can do this across multiple things, right? And it's just kind of amazing to me anyway, that you can do this on the fly, basically create these gigs, create this dashboard together, and put these cards in a card format together, and then query across that data so that I can quickly get that information, and then I could share it with Mark or Christian, whoever, and then John could go ahead and get a share of that too, and then he could query that further if he wanted to. So it's kind of a slightly incredible sort of the Trello type of maybe Microsoft Planner type of dashboard, or the cards that you see like that, and then taking that and being able to query the underlying data from it and being able to then share it selectively with people. So GigJam, very exciting. Check it out in public preview. You can do that. And then you guys have some thoughts about how we might use GigJam in the future?
One question before I get all futurist on you. How do I, it's interesting, it doesn't seem to know any of my contacts. Is it just not well connected into?
You have to authorize it, so did you authorize It's another login.
Yet another login. So again, preview, right? So there's some oddities like that, but that's one of the things that makes it feel a little strange when you first started. I wanted to just share something with you, and it doesn't know who Naomi is. So
right, but if you authorize your so for example your Outlook, so it's saying connect them to Outlook.com, right? You can do that.
Log in again.
Contact list from there, and as well as 6512.
So if we think about sort of where this fits into the whole spectrum, this is about very rapid, real-time collaboration using something that we look at visually, right? Mm-hmm. We're not necessarily reading it. It's more of a visual thing. You're sort of, like you said, ring fencing stuff so that we eyeball it together. It's not a co-editing thing.
Right. It's about grabbing the data you need to solve a problem, right? So if you're grabbing this data and you're saying, okay, I need this Excel spreadsheet and this Word document and maybe something from Dynamics, right? Being able to package it up and query that data very quickly across all of those things and then share it out with people. So you can just grab all the sources and share it with people.
Right. So a flow might be, we're in Skype for Business, which we all love. And I ask you a question and you say, well, just wait a minute. Let me fire up a GigJam and show you something.
Exactly.
That's the kind of use case that we're talking about here, right? It's very, very ad hoc, very short-term stuff. We could certainly use it during a webinar like this to share stuff as we're talking, which is pretty much just like any other meeting we have in the course of doing work. So it's probably filling a very specific niche for collaboration, short-term, small volume kind of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, what makes it exciting for me is, again, it's a point application, right? But it's using these massive services underneath, right? You've got Cortana Analytics, right? You can just go ahead and query a Word document, right? Straight off the bat. You don't have to teach it anything. You don't have to do anything. You just say, hey, find session titles with machine learning, in my case, on it, right? And then share that data with Mark. Right? It's just like, I don't even have to think about what I'm doing, or I have to construct an application or anything. I just need to open the document and query it, right? Open the thing and query it and send that data to the right person. So this is just it's an easy way maybe to prove these big functionality that's out there in the cloud, but make it super personal and super quick and super relevant for people. And I think that's, we'll see probably more of this type of application or this querying functionality baked into other things. I think GigJam is a great way if you're just a contractor and you use lots of different services. So if you're using Dropbox and Box and OneDrive, right, and Asana, and you want to query all of that data all at once and then share it with people, GigJam's an awesome solution for that.
Can I look at it slightly different? I agree with that. But from the, as we're increasingly geographically dispersed, here I work for a company where my closest peer is 5 states away, down in Texas. Yes. But is the fact that GigJam is more of an active collaboration versus something that you would present and send would be very passive. Go take a look at this, go and query it yourself, come back, let's have a conversation that way. I think of GigJam of something where if I'm working with someone in my sales team or my product team and I want specifically input on something, I say, look, we need to discuss this, and we can, so again, it's this very active, here's where I need focus, this is what we need to discuss, here's the data, let's look at this, let's cross-reference with this other system, make a decision, close out that gig. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, bring all these things together, which is the big power of it, so it's the problem-solving focus that we want, and thinking, I have to open that spreadsheet and that data, and you don't need to have a meeting about it, right? You just need to get all the data pieces together and, basically funnel the answer to the right person. Right. You don't have to sit around for an hour and discuss it.
Well, it's kind of like Julia demoed at WPC last year as maybe you are sitting in a meeting with the executive team, but you want to pull somebody out that's not in that meeting in to answer that specific question while the 5 of you are sitting in that room looking at this data, get their answer, get it back without pulling somebody in that might be at another location to be a part of that meeting to get that information. You're right. It's a spot solution. It fills a certain need. It can be very powerful. I think it'll be limited, one, as Mark is experiencing, being able to actually log in and access all the services. And then any tool like this is then limited by, and Power Apps kind of suffered from this with the first wave of it, the limited number of connections that are possible. So GigJam will be more powerful the more services that become available within it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that's a great point to wrap up on. I guess we're out of time. I didn't realize the hour is just flying by there. So it doesn't even feel like we talked that much. But certainly appreciate you guys for a great discussion today. And especially John White, our Canadian and hosting
Canadian
next month, I hope. So, in addition to being an amazing MVP. But really
only if he has a beard. Only if he has a beard.
Only beard. Okay.
We have certain standards we got to hold to. Yeah.
But we'll appreciate that. So as ever, you can check us out on Twitter and keep the conversation going at CollabTalk. So hashtag CollabTalk. And you could also obviously sign up for our next show at itunity.com/CollabTalk. And thank you so much, guys. Appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks, Naomi.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Christian. And thank you, John. Thank you so much for taking time today. And also thank you for everyone who joined us today and has an opportunity to watch this online. It will be available later today online if you just head over, as Naomi said, to itunity.com/collabtalk, itunity.com/collabtalk. And all of our presenters here today will be part of next week's Unity Connect online event that runs from March 20th to Thursday the 23rd. We are covering SharePoint, Office 365, Azure, Skype, enterprise from all different perspectives, from an IT pro perspective, from a business perspective, or a developer perspective. We hope you can join us. It's free to register. Head over to unityconnect.com/online, unityconnect.com/online. We hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Collab Talk, which will be posted on itunity.com/collabtalk. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.